Welcome back to the studio.
Welcome back to the in-person rundown.
Yeah, this feels nice.
It does.
This is nice.
It's been a hot minute.
I'm enjoying myself.
Me too.
We haven't even started.
Well, it's funny because I was away at a training camp for the first 7 weeks of the new year. Mm-hmm. And then we hardly had any time before
And I was
COVID
away
hit.
before that.
That's right. So it's been a long time since we were last together. I think it was our New Year's episode or our Christmas episode.
Oh my God.
It's been months.
Whoa.
Happy May, everyone.
Life is
Happy New Year.
Different. Remember travel? Actually, speaking of that, remember that thing we used to do?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
It's really hard to believe that I was in another country like 10 weeks ago.
I was in another country on March 9th.
That's right.
In Los Angeles.
And that was the last marathon.
That was about 2 days before everything
Shut down. Wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day.
It is. Spring has sprung.
Yeah, I'm really amped to sit in my backyard and have a beverage or two this evening in the sunshine.
Good for you. Mm-hmm. I'm excited for you. I plan to do the same. Mm-hmm. So it's Friday.
It is.
It's Friday and it's sunny and we kind of skip spring.
Yeah, spring to summer. Fine with that. No problem.
Snowed 2 weeks ago.
We had spring. It rained for weeks.
That's true. But it was But it was
cold. It was.
We basically had 3 months of March.
3 months of March.
Yeah.
Or November.
And now June.
Interchangeable months.
Or July.
Yeah, same weather.
Yeah. Well, we're very happy. Mm-hmm. How has your week of running been?
My week of running was very good. I did 2 days of cycling, 4 days of running. Today, off day. Yeah, it was my boyfriend's birthday, so went on a big bike ride that day, and I promised myself I wouldn't complain once because it was his birthday, and I didn't.
What a gift.
And then I was exhausted after. It was kind of like pull into the driveway, fall over.
Right.
But
be shoveled into the into the house. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it was a solid week of training. I loved my workout yesterday. I did another one of those just run for time workouts, and those have been a hoot lately. I'm going to keep doing them because they're a lot of fun. A hoot and a holler.
So what did you do yesterday?
Yesterday, I did 3 sets of 2 minutes, 2 minutes, 50 seconds, 50 seconds, 30 seconds.
Ooh.
So basically, it's like 3 sets of 600, 600, 300, 300, 200.
Right.
But like the 2 minutes were a little longer than 600. And then the 50 seconds and 30 seconds were like just shy of 300 and 200 meters.
Love that.
But it was really fun. But you look like I've mentioned earlier, you look a little silly running a 30-second 200 down a road. It looks really fast.
Yeah, it does.
Because when else do you see someone sprinting down your street?
Right.
So like it draws attention. Like people come from out of their houses to the end of their driveway to say like, what are you doing?
Are you okay? Yeah. You're like, yep, just getting working.
Yeah, I'll be here for 2 more hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm liking running for time.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
I've been doing the same, but on hills.
Yeah.
It's been great. I've been doing a lot of hills.
How many times a week are you doing hills?
Well, officially like only 1 to 2 in terms of a focused workout. Mm-hmm. But now that High Park is open again, I've been kind of jumping in there for some runs. And then sometimes I'll just throw in a couple uphills at the end just to work on the turnover.
Just to wake the legs up.
Yeah, it's like doing strides, but like it's combining strides with a gym essentially because we don't have access to gyms.
No.
And so why not go run some hills and get your strength in that way?
Yeah, it's just like hills and band walks.
Yep. The quads are burning.
All the time.
Yes. I did a great outdoor workout the other day with box jumps on like a bench at a baseball diamond. Yeah, gotten creative. It's working well.
And you spend so much more time outside now.
You do.
Because I used to cross train on the elliptical machine, which is an indoor machine.
Which is a machine of torture.
Just, you know what? I kind of like the elliptical.
Do you?
I've got.
You're the only person in the world I've heard say that.
I don't mind it. I just, I get my.
You look like you're jazzercising.
I get my elliptical on. I listen to a pod or two.
Yeah.
Sometimes I love to elliptical and chat. Like I elliptical and I call people, and people find it really annoying because it's kind of like heavy breathing and like it's not a nozzle
inside your house.
Yeah, exactly. It's not ASMR. It would be really bad ASMR. People would not listen. I can barely get the people I love to stay on the phone, but it's just because the mic moves while you're ellipticling.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't sound good. I've been told.
Right.
But I still do it.
Right. But now you've been getting your cross training in outside.
And now I cross train on the bike. So a few people have told me I'm tanned. And I'm
You
not.
are.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm notoriously pale. So
Well,
I
see,
feel
this was
very good
actually
about
our
this.
grand plan as we waited until the weather got nice to do our next in-studio recording so that we
So you look
didn't blend in with the white walls.
everyone looks better in the summer. You're like at least 30% more attractive in the summer. Everyone.
Well, here's to summer. So we are going to we have actually a really fun episode planned. And we've been planning this for a little while now.
We have been.
And it's going to be, I think there's going to be a lot of hot takes. And I also think that spicy takes. And I think that and this is what we hope for. We're going to get a lot of listener feedback on this one because people love favorites. Mm-hmm. People have their like they pick their horses and they stick to them. So what we're talking about is we are going to attempt to make a definitive statement on who is Canada's greatest mid-distance/distance runner in modern history. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be lots of people that we leave off this list. And if we've left off one of your favorites, listeners, we would love for you to tell us why we're wrong and why you think this person should have been included. But we have a number of different sets of criteria, and we've broken down, we've come up with 4 contenders, 2 male, 2 female, and we're sort of looking at contenders over the last 25-ish years.
Contenders who are still on the record board today.
Yes, right, exactly. Still on the record board, still relevant. In fact, 3 of them are still active athletes. 1 is not. So should we do a drum roll? Drum roll for our contestants. Stepping on up in position number 1. Well, actually, without any specific order.
Yeah, this really is. This is just the way we wrote it.
Right.
Kevin Sullivan.
And I think this is probably the most obvious pick, I will say.
Yeah, it really is.
He pretty much every article I've ever read about Kevin Sullivan opens with arguably the greatest mid-distance runner in Canadian history, Kevin Sullivan, blah, blah, blah. So
it's true. One North American distance runner. You can extend that border a little bit.
Yes. And we'll talk about why. In fact, I think all of these could probably fit into that in some degree. So the first is Mr. Kevin Sullivan, 1,500 meter and mile specialist, although he had some phenomenal range. Our second one.
Mr. Mohammed Ahmed.
Mohammed Ahmed, one of my favorite runners of all time, one of my favorite people of all time.
Wonderful person.
Specializes in the 5K and 10K on the track, 5,000, 10,000 meter.
Our third contestant, Ms. Gabriella DeBuse Stafford.
Yeah. I mean, we'd be silly to leave her off.
Duh. And finally, Melissa Bishop.
Yep.
One of the women who kind of put Canadian mid-distance really on the map. There were people who certainly came before her. She talks a ton about Deanne Cummins and watching Deanne, succeed and giving her the ability to think she too could be that good. The same way, which is what Melissa did for me and lots of other people.
It's like that half generation above.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Melissa is someone you have to talk about because for me, we've written all this out. Melissa's got way less titles than the other people.
Right.
But her consistency is bananas.
Yeah.
And her consistency at the very top.
Yes. Now, we're going to have a few little asterisks that we're going to address right before we get into this. So the first obvious one is that Kevin Sullivan has been retired from elite running for the better part of a decade. And obviously our other 3 contenders are all still active athletes. So it's really hard to compare someone who's wrapped up their career and has had basically 20 years of successes under their belt compared to people like Gabriella, who's in her mid-20s and still has lots of racing ahead of her. Same with Mo and Melissa. They're a little older than Gabriella, but they still have hopefully at least one more Olympics.
Yeah, the story's not written.
Right. So that makes it difficult. There's a few other things that we're going to talk about along the way. We'll get into these as we go, but things like the evolution of drug testing, the evolution of technology in sport in general, and how that has potentially helped those who are still active versus those who are not, the differences between men and women and the differences between the NCAA and the CIS/U Sport.
A lot of differences.
A lot of differences.
A lot of similarities.
There sure are. Should we get into it?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to start with all 4 of these athletes
are from Ontario.
We're sorry, rest of the world, rest of the country. We know that you have produced some amazing athletes. It just happens that these 4 all grew up in Ontario and therefore all attended the unofficial Junior Olympics, which are the OFSA Track and Field Championships.
And we recognize that OFSA is really annoying if you're not from Ontario.
Yep.
We get it.
Yep.
But that's where they all started. So here we go. Kevin, easily the most successful OFSA runner of all these athletes.
Of all time, I would say.
Of all time. Mo, second behind him. And then Gabriella and Melissa.
Not as dominant. It's interesting.
So for Kevin, he has 5 cross-country titles every year he ran, because when he was in school, there was the 5th year of high school.
Yep.
5 cross-country titles, 8 track titles, almost never lost a race he entered.
And he
still holds OFSA records.
Right. And he was a star even before that. So I don't think it was ever ratified as a world record, partly because I don't know if they actually keep age group world records for this young. But Kevin had the unofficial 14-year-old world record in the 800. He ran 1:53 as a 14-year-old. He also, in his high school career, was one of very few people in the world to break the 4-minute mile while still in high school.
It's rare. It's becoming more common now.
It is. But again, evolutions in technology and level of competition and all of that. And this would have been in the 90s that Kevin did that. So pretty stellar. So yeah, their high school careers, all of them had great high school careers, but I'd say the guys were a little more dominant than the gals.
Mo, not in grade 9 and grade 10, but by grade 11 and 12, he was obviously extremely strong, especially at cross country.
Yep. 2 cross country titles, 1 track title at OFSA. Mm-hmm. And then we go into the ladies. So Gabriella, 1 cross country title.
I have a good Gabriella story.
Go for it.
From OFSA. Gabriella and I are the same age. We are both from Ontario, so we competed at OFSA together. And then we both started at U.T. in the same year, in the same class. I've done everything with Gabriella.
I'm sorry.
And running. It's okay. I never won any awards. I've said it before. When the Stafford sisters are your teammates, you never win, but It makes you better. But actually, from our early days, I remember in grade 11, I had a pretty good year at OFSA. I made both the 15 and the 8 final. Didn't do great when I got there.
But you made it.
I got there. Yep. Exactly. And for me, that was a big victory. And so we're finishing the 800 heats. And for people who have run OFSA before, you know that the 800 heats and finals are on the same day. They're about 3 to 4 hours apart.
Yeah. Just enough time to collapse into the grass, have a
drink of chocolate milk, and then go
get
again.
Back.
Yeah. So
your cool down from one is the warm up for the other.
Exactly. So, and it's always 35 degrees. Anyway, we finished the 800 heats and Gabriella doesn't make the final. And I remember her lying on the ground and she looked at me and she goes, because I had just made the final. And she looks at me and she goes, I don't know how you guys do it. This double is crazy. Because we'd run the 1500 the night before. And I'm kind of looking at her like, yeah, on a day's work. No big deal. Big kid on campus. Anyway, fast forward. I wasn't the big kid on campus even the next year. And then I proceeded to not be the big kid on campus for the 8 years that would follow that.
Right.
But
you had that moment of glory at OFSA.
We're at modern day. But yes, I had that moment of glory at OFSA.
So it's funny, you're not the only one to say that. I mean, there's a good chance. I mean, U of T's turned out some amazing athletes, but you were one of them. So there's a good chance that had, Gabriella not been in your program in the same year, those titles you might have accrued more of them. Or more sort of accolades at that level.
Honestly, the thing was, Gabriella kind of stopped competing. So we'll get on to CIS titles. But Gabriella kind of stopped competing in the CIS because she outgrew it at a very young age.
Right.
She got so much better, sort of from 19 to 20, especially. And that was the year she made her first Olympics. She made World Indoor. She was beyond the CIS.
Right.
So I still got to chase her around in practice, but in terms of her actual titles from university, when you look at them, there aren't many, but it's because she was busy frying bigger fish.
That's true. I do just want to make one note because I think it's a funny comparison, just talking about like always slightly being in her shadow. Kevin Sullivan in any small town anywhere in the country would have been the greatest sporting star to ever come out of that city. Kevin grew up in Brantford, Ontario, which happens to also be the hometown of this little hockey player you might have heard of named Wayne Gretzky. So in every interview with Kevin from the earlier days, when he talks about, what it was like growing up in Brantford and being this big star, he's like, no, I was small potatoes. Wayne Gretzky, how do you get any better than that? So you were the Kevin Sullivan to
well, Melissa Bishop also grew up where I grew up, right? So
my gosh.
I go on runs in the valley and I hear like an elderly couple from their car go Melissa. And I just say, thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. It's a compliment.
So moving on to those university years. So this is again where it's going to be really difficult to compare. Not only were they sort of different eras, but Kevin and Mo both attended American universities. They went to the NCAA, which we know just especially at that time had such a higher level of competition, access to better facilities, higher level meets, all of this. So it's really difficult to compare these. Whereas Gabriella and Melissa stayed in Canada. Kudos to them, by the way, because especially when Bish stayed, not many people of her caliber were choosing to stay in Canada.
Almost no one. And even like, I really credit Gabriella with this because I feel like our year, and it certainly wasn't me because by the time Gabriella was in grade 12, she was a name and people like she was winning stuff. She was obviously very good. And people were really surprised when she decided not to go to the States.
Right. And she almost did, right? Didn't she get an offer to Stanford?
That was later.
Oh, that's right.
That was later. Yeah. That was midway through our undergrad. And a lot of people were surprised at her decision to stay. But I think she was one of the people who hugely improved the CIS. And it was kind of the tide turned where, especially in women's running, it was totally viable for you to stay in Canada and have a really strong group of women to compete against. And so to her credit, like her and Melissa are two women who helped make Canada a viable place to have strong competition.
Yep, for sure. That being said, we still can't neglect the fact that when you win titles or become an All-American in the NCAA, just because that level of competition is so much greater, it tends to mean it carries a little more weight.
Totally. And even now, like if you look at, so for example, Jenna Westaway competed in the CIS 2 winters ago. The same winter she ran 1:59. Like, so obviously like the winning time or like the fastest time in U Sport was way ahead of the fastest time in the NCAA.
Right. There just wasn't the depth.
But there's two things. The depth was, it's comically different. Mm-hmm. Like it's not even close to the same. And we don't have an age cap.
And you don't have an outdoor season.
So Jenna would have been too old to compete
in the NCAA.
Yeah. Actually, that might not be true.
You can compete up until you're 25, I believe.
She was 25. So she would have been fine.
Yeah.
She would have been older than most runners, but we need to sort of fact check this, but I'm pretty sure she was 25 last winter because she's just a year older than I am. So that checks out to me.
So it would have been close. Yeah.
But yeah, those are two big differences is the depth really isn't comparable and the age cap is something you have to think about because there are athletes who compete in U Sport who are over 25.
Right. Many. So that being said, this is where in this category, we kind of called it all American / all Canadian / titles. Kevin Sullivan takes the cake far and away. 14 All-American placements. 4 of them in cross country and 10 in track. And this is where, in my mind, Kevin's dominance is really shown because Kevin was almost exclusively a miler. He was a 1,500 and mile athlete in university. He was an 800 athlete in high school. And in the NCAA, the men run 10K cross country. And he was a 4-time All-American in the NCAA cross. So to have that kind of range is extraordinary. He also was a 4-time NCAA champion in track, and he set an NCAA record in the indoor mile during his tenure at the University of Michigan. So that's just, I don't think, you'd be hard-pressed to find another NCAA athlete who's as decorated as him across so many different events.
Mm-hmm.
That said, Mo, pretty close, 11 All-American placements for the University of Wisconsin, also across track and cross country. Mm-hmm. So close second, but I'd still give this one to Kevin.
So for Gabriella's titles, she's only got 5, which relative to the men, not many. But like I said earlier, she left basically competing in the CIS.
It was kind of a fun side
She
gig.
would show up and score us 10 points in the 1500, like because the U of T women's team, when I was on it, we won 3 years in a row track, and then we won cross country the fall after that. And she actually wasn't on that cross country team, but she was on the 3 track teams that won. And she would just show up, kind of jog a 1500, give us our 10 points, and that was that. But it wasn't, it was not her main goal, because it also didn't have the prestige of the NCAA.
Right.
I'm sure if she was at an NCAA school, it would have felt different.
For sure.
And she liked the team aspect. She liked competing with her sister. She liked helping us because we were all teammates, but it just didn't carry the same weight.
Right. So Melissa, surprisingly, to my mind, actually has the least amount of CIS titles or national titles at the university level. She only had 3 from our research. And again, listeners and or people that we're talking about, if you think that we're wrong and you want to fact check us, please do, because we love being proven wrong. And we also love your hot takes. So we're calling for your feedback as much as possible here. But from our research, Melissa only had 3 CIS titles for the University of Windsor. And again, I say only 3. That's a very impressive career. But compared to what she's done since, well, exactly. But neither do I. But compared to what she's done since, it doesn't. I think it really shows that
she was a slow burn.
She was a slow burn, but she was always like, to your point about being consistent. She was always really good. Like she was consistently winning. She was consistently winning medals at the junior level, provincially and nationally. Mm-hmm. She just wasn't necessarily crushing everyone the way that someone like a Kevin Sullivan was.
Mm-hmm. It's and also with Melissa, it's interesting. Like she's been so consistent in her improvements as well.
Right.
Whereas like with Gabriella, there are a few spots where
the graph goes like this.
Yeah, exactly. You see massive jumps, but Melissa's never been like that. She's been like, her biggest jump is she went from 202 to 159 in 1 year. And that was the Olympic year in 2012.
Right.
She went from like 202 low to 159 high.
And that kind of checks out as a developmental to a professional level athlete.
It's a big jump, but it happens. Right. Especially if, I would imagine the season before, she'd run like 202 every race. It was like she was banging her head against a wall. And then one day it just happened.
Yeah, she was knocking on the door for a while.
But yeah, that's a difference between... that's what sets Melissa apart from the other 3 athletes, is where there were huge jumps in improvement for the other 3. Melissa was just like the epitome of a slow burn.
Right. Yeah. Moving on to Canadian national outdoor titles. And we're only looking at the senior level here because it would be way too in the weeds to start taking into account all the different categories of age group.
Youth, junior. Yeah.
So in this one, Mo wins the category with 6 Canadian national outdoor titles.
And then Kevin, Gabrielle, and Melissa all have 4.
All have 4. Right. But again, even the years when, for instance, Melissa, I think she was first in 2013 and 2014, second in 2015, first in 2017, second in 2019. So she was always there. It's just not, you don't have the gold medal necessarily.
Yeah.
Canadian records was our next category. This one is really interesting to me. And I think we should start with the person that has the most, if you want to talk about this individual, because this kind of epitomizes that meteoric rise.
Well, Gabriella set 6 records in 1 calendar year.
And that's just records that she didn't break that were her own.
But yeah, so she actually broke 8. So here's the thing. Again, Gabriella started slowly, but then just bust right through. So yeah, she's got the most Canadian records. They're fresh, they're strong records. And then there's like a few on the board. I said it when we had our conversation a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Basically any record from the 1,000 meter through to the
5,000?
5,000.
8K?
She ran a 10K on the road. I think it'd be pretty damn good.
Well, she almost set the Canadian unofficial 8K road record
by accident in a workout
last week.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're hers if she wants them. So I think she's got the range and the ability to do it. However, right now she's really laser focused on this one specific event.
Well, not even on one, because her 6 records come in both the indoor and outdoor 1,500 mile and 5,000.
But the 15 mile is still her baby right now.
That's true.
I think she will become a world-class 5K runner one day. Not that she's not already, but I think she will pivot to the 5K one day. But right now, I think she's still focused on the firmly middle distance.
Right. So the next highest number of Canadian records is Mo. And what I love about this is that he holds 5 records. Both outdoors and indoors, 3,000 meter, 5,000 meter, and 10,000 meter outdoors. And then indoors, he has the 3,000 and the 5,000. And the fun thing here is that this is where you see the turning of the tide, because he actually broke both the indoor and outdoor 3,000 meter Canadian records that were originally held by Kevin. Mm-hmm. So Kevin Sullivan still holds 2 Canadian records. We talked about this a couple weeks ago on the show. He had 4 in his career. He had the outdoor 1,500 mile and the indoor mile and 3,000, and he still holds both of his outdoor records. But it was the 3,000 meter indoor that Mo broke of his. So yeah, it's like the turning of the tide. But that also means that his outdoor records have stood for 20 years.
Kevin's outdoor records are very, very impressive.
Unbelievably impressive. And then Melissa's a real 800 runner.
Yeah,
like
purebred.
She has set the indoor and outdoor 800 meter records, still holds the outdoor, but the indoor has been broken by Jenna Westaway.
So Kevin Sullivan has made an astonishing 22 world championship teams.
And to be clear, that's across indoor, outdoor, and cross country.
Yeah. Mo and Gabriella have been on 7 and Melissa on 4. However, the big thing we want to talk about, the Olympics.
Right. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Kevin has been to 3 Olympic Games and doubled in 2008, which means he competed in 2 events at one Games.
With heats, semis, and finals.
So what did he double in that year?
Well, that year he doubled in the 15 and the 5. So the 5 would have had heats and finals, and the 15 would have had heats, semis, and finals. So we're going to talk about 2 main stats for each person under the category of Olympic Games. It's how many Olympics they competed in, and then what their highest Olympic placing ever was. Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, Kevin was at 3 Olympics, 2000, 04, and 08, and his highest ever placing was 5th. He came 5th in the 1500, which was the best performance by any Canadian 1,500 meter at any Olympics ever, and is still true to this day.
Yeah, remains true.
Yeah.
Mo and Melissa have both been to 2 Olympics, and their highest placing is 4th for each of them.
Right. But again, Mo also doubled in 2016. At the last Olympics, he doubled 510, which is, any double is so hard. Mm-hmm. But he would have had to do heats, finals of the 5, and then a 10K. Where he placed 4th. No, he placed 4th in the 5.
And Mo and Melissa also both hold medals from World Championship Games. So they do hold medals at the highest level of competition, just painfully short at the Olympics.
Yes.
And Gabriella's only been to 1, 2016. She was only 20 years old. It was her first Olympics, and she didn't make it out of the heats. I think we're going to see a wildly different Gabriella at this next Olympics.
Yeah, and this is where the age thing just doesn't work to her advantage in this comparison game. But if the trend continues, these stats are going to also change rapidly. Mm-hmm. So moving on to those international medals. Again, it's interesting because we started off, Kevin kind of won the first few categories, but he only, as far as our information goes, he only has 1 international medal to speak of, which was in the 1994 Commonwealth Games. But again, he was really consistent at the top level. He just wasn't able to secure a spot on the podium in any other major events that he was in.
And Gabriella has 2, one from FISU, which is the World University Games, and one from NACAC. Mo has 4. His big, most recent medals from the 2019 World Championships, where he got bronze, 2 from the Commonwealth Games, 1 from Pan Am, and Melissa Bishop has 1 from Pan Am, 2015 World Silver, huge race.
Yeah.
And 2 from the 2013 Francophone Games.
Right. And I think this is where it's important to have a bit of a conversation about the concept of global drug cheats and drug testing, because it's going to be difficult to compare these. Kevin, I mean, so the first EPO test ever administered at an Olympic Games was in 2000. So that was Kevin's first Olympics. So technically, Kevin was competing at the highest level in the age of EPO testing. However, as we know, with any new kind of test for any substance, it takes a while to work out the kinks. It takes a while to understand what other substances people could be taking in combination with that to get an advantage. So this is going to be, I had a conversation earlier today with one of my friends about this. One of my friends, Matt Hughes, might have heard of him,
Another Canadian record
holder multiple times over.
What a name drop.
And well, you've been dropping. When I grew up with Gabriella, when I was racing with Gabriella.
No, we don't anymore. She got too good, but there was a time.
I've never been at Matt's level either, but Matt was, his point was that it was a different era of doping. We hadn't uncovered, for instance, the Russian doping scandal yet. We hadn't perfected EPO testing or testing for any other number of substances. Not to say that we won't in 5 years.
I was about to say, we're behind the curve, certainly, on something else right now that we are unaware of.
But we don't know about it yet. And we do know from that era that there were many, many, many drug cheats who never got caught. Many did. To that point, though, Melissa Bishop, again, heartbreakingly close in 2016. The year before, in 2015, wins silver at the World Championships in the 800 in the final after breaking the Canadian record in the semis. Mm-hmm. Highest placing ever at a World Championships by a Canadian female 800-meter runner. And the woman who won the gold that year was the Belarusian athlete Arzamasova, who won gold and then last year was provisionally suspended by the Athletics Integrity Unit for a banned substance. And it has yet to be uncovered whether any sanctions will be handed to her and if they'll go as far back as 2015. But the point is, we know that she tested positive for a banned substance and that she had won that race that Melissa was in. So there is a chance that our homegrown Melissa Bishop was actually a world gold medalist. And then Mo. I mean, just Mo's bronze medal at Worlds after seeing that crippling disappointment of just missing out on a medal in 2016 remains one of my favorite sporting memories.
It was an awesome race. And he, after, said that he just kept thinking back to the Olympics and that last 100 meters of not today, not again.
He kept falling back. He fell back and he
fought.
He clawed for every single step of that race. And you could just see the fire in his eyes. He was not going to let that go. And then, as we've mentioned before, Gabriella, she's got sort of 2 developmental medals. That's going to be blown out of the water. And at the Worlds this year, she ran 3:56, which in any other year would have given her a medal. It landed her in 6th because that final was crazy.
It was the fastest women's 15 final in history.
Ever, right. But never count out Gabriella. We're going to see more medals on the board from this lady. Finally, what could be considered one of the definitive tiebreakers if we had a tie. All-time world rankings. And there has to be an asterisk here with Kevin again, because he has been off the scene for over a decade. More time has passed, and therefore there have been more opportunities for people to bump him down the all-time list. Mm-hmm. But Kevin in the 1500 is 97th all-time, and in the mile, he is 70th all-time.
Mo is 79th all-time in the 5,000 and 60th all-time in the 10,000. And
Gabriella wins this category
by a long shot. She's 21st in the 1,500 meter all time.
16th in the mile.
And that's why I know nothing else about this suggests, except for the Canadian records in 1 year, nothing else about this list suggests that Gabriella should be the best. But that's why my money's on her.
I will say, not to take anything away from this, her personal bests, which landed her on that table, also were the most recent. Mm-hmm. So they're from a year ago. And that means that there's been the least amount of time passage between when she got on the board and now. Mm-hmm. So there's been less opportunity for people to bump her down. However, she is miles ahead.
I can also, so here's the thing. Melissa's 71st. And an interesting thing happened this year. We're going to get into the weeds a little bit, but I'm going to say it. So Caster Semenya, along with other athletes who have elevated levels of testosterone for a woman.
Yep.
were told that they either had to switch events or lower those testosterone levels. Mm-hmm. So this year, the 800 changed because at the beginning of the year, these women were allowed to compete. Mm-hmm. And by, what was it, about June, they weren't anymore.
Right.
In those first few Diamond Leagues, after those women were removed from the race, the times got dramatically slower because, you know, Caster, who has kind of been the poster woman for this, unfortunately, for this campaign, was kind of like a pacer in every Diamond League. And so she was dragging these other women to really fast times. And so in the years that Melissa was kind of off of competitive running, there was, I would say 2018 was still a fast year, but this past year was not as fast internationally because Caster and some of these other women were removed. And now other people like Aji Wilson, extremely dominant, you know, has run 155.
Yeah, I think so.
So other women still pushed the pace, but you didn't see these like there was a couple of Diamond Leagues where no one broke 2 minutes.
Right, which is unheard of in recent years.
So you just didn't see these mass fast finishes. And then people got in their groove again, and you would see a bunch of women come in at 158 and things like that. But there were a few races when I was like, what happened? Like, did they all forget how to run? Like it was an adjustment. So I don't know if in Melissa's case, like that many people have run faster than her in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's a really, really important point. And one that we're never going to be able to sort of have a definitive statement about. We don't. Because it's not just, and again, just to be very clear, it's so different from like a drug cheat where you can just remove them from the table, because this was not anyone's fault.
She was completely competing within her rights.
Right. It's just that she, you know, there was this ruling that was handed down that made the change more recently, but it won't affect any standings or results before that, unless it comes out that for some reason she had failed a drug test.
And nor should it, because she didn't break any rules.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Well, Maddie, we've covered a lot.
Yes, a lot.
And now it's the time. Based on everything that we've said, based on everything you know, can you come up with a definitive answer to the question, who is the all-time best Canadian mid-distance/distance runner in modern history?
On this day, on this exact day, this very day, I'm kind of leaning towards Mo.
Okay.
Because he's got the world's medal. That's what sets him ahead of Kevin for me, is that 2019 world's performance.
Yep.
Ask me in 2 years, I'm pretty sure I'll say Gabriella.
Okay, fair.
She's not there quite yet, but all signs point that she will be.
Yep.
So yeah, right now, I'm willing to say, for me, it's Mo.
Okay.
On this day.
Fair, I like it. I'm going to go with Kevin.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Kevin. And it's funny because I kind of see like Gabriella and Mo in one camp, and like Bish and Sully in another camp.
Well, they were because they've trailblazers.
Exactly. They were trailblazers. They've been consistent forever. Whereas, and Mo was really good as a high schooler too, don't get me wrong. And as a junior, he actually, we didn't mention this because we weren't getting into juniors, but I think it is worth mentioning. Mo actually competed. He finished in the top 10 twice at World Junior Cross Country Championships. And he was the junior 5,000 meter champion on 4 different occasions, as well as a Pan Am junior champ. So he had a heck of a good junior career. But then, as we mentioned, like university still really good, but it was more of a meteoric rise post-collegiate. Mm-hmm. Obviously the same with Gabriella, whereas Kevin and Melissa were just like forever. From middle school, just so consistent.
Just good at running.
Just really good at running.
Yeah.
And I know it's a bit unfair because Kevin's story has been told, whereas the other 3 are still evolving. Mm-hmm. But on this day, as we said, like right now, I'm going to go with Kevin.
Interesting.
I'm going to go with Sully. Yeah.
So the people have to tell us what they think.
Yeah. Tell us why we're wrong.
So yeah. So if my pick's Mo and Kate's pick is Kevin, what do you guys think?
Right. The other thing that we didn't say, and I do want to, this is a very important point, I think, because we've both picked men, which is fine. It's where the stats kind of laid out. But one important piece of information to keep in the back of your mind is that women's running at the highest level is still in its evolution compared to men, because
we're years behind them.
Years behind. Yeah. So there's not necessarily been the same, I would argue there's been the same levels of opportunity in the last 20 years for men and women in Canada at the highest level of track. But in terms of all the other factors that lead up to that, we just don't have the same history on the women's side that we have the men's. Not that either of these women are steeplechasers, but this is a kind of crystallizing point. The steeplechase wasn't even considered an event for women in the Olympics until 2008. Well, when I was in university, women couldn't compete in the steeplechase.
I know. Well, they couldn't, like, everything builds on itself, right? So Mo and, earlier in time, Kevin were drawing upon years of opportunity.
Right.
That Melissa and Gabriella weren't. So yeah, I think it takes people punching through for this next generation to believe it's possible. We saw that in the women's marathon this year. That's just how it works. Mm-hmm. So,
but there was a good chunk of
we were
history.
Going to fall over and die.
Well, I think the fear was, of course, our uteruses were going to fall out, which I'm always concerned about that when I'm running.
It every day.
I have to kind of hold my uterus in to make sure that it doesn't.
That's why we can't run as fast as men.
Right, exactly.
Actually, there are a plethora of other reasons why we can't run as fast as men. That's a whole different kettle of fish.
Podcast.
Yeah. But we can't, and that's fine. But yeah, no, I think that is an important thing to mention, that thankfully, and actually the other side of that coin, though, not negating the fact that women's running is still years behind men's in terms of the opportunities we've had and the length of time we've had those opportunities for. But running was one of the first sports to bring equal prize money to men and women. And in fact, we're at a stage now where women are kind of making, not across the board, but in some cases, women are out earning men in professional running.
I can't think of another sport where that would happen.
And again, we're not talking about NBA salaries here.
Right.
But like someone like Sydney McLaughlin.
Yes.
Signed, we don't know the details of her contract, but people have said signed an unprecedented women's deal that rivals that of, like an Andre DeGrasse or Usain Bolt.
Yeah. When Jenny Simpson signed out of college, she signed a 5-year deal that later became public, and she was the highest earning track and field athlete other than Usain Bolt of all time. Mm-hmm. It's just phenomenal. And as it should be. No,
and it's very cool. I feel proud to be a part of a sport. It's, it's still an uphill battle for the ladies in some ways, and will be for a while, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're making progress. We're making big progress.
The other thing that used to be true is basically as soon as you wanted to have a family as a woman, you didn't come back to track, which meant that your career was technically a lot shorter in many cases than men. You had fewer years to accrue all of these accolades. Whereas we see someone like Melissa have her amazing little baby girl and come back and compete incredibly strong. That's true of so many distance female runners right now.
And I mean, maternity protection is a 2019 thing in a running contract in some cases. So it's new.
Right.
But at least these conversations are being had.
Yeah. All right. So given all of that context, listeners, it's your turn. We want you to tweet at us. We want you to go to our Facebook page. We want you to join our Facebook discussion group, the Shakeout discussion group on Facebook. We want you to post us in your Instagram stories. Tell us why we're wrong. We want to hear your reasons. Who's your top pick? Is it someone from our list, or is it someone we've excluded, and why? What factors dethrone the people that we've put on the top? So get at us. Maddie, it was so lovely seeing you in person again.
So lovely seeing you too.
With our physical distance across the table. I'll wave at you from across the table for anyone not watching. Yes, by the way, we should mention, in case you couldn't tell from the way that we've been describing things, we are videoing this episode.
Yeah.
So check out our YouTube channel where you can see our very sunburned faces and view this conversation. Leave your comments. That's another place you can leave your comments, your hot takes, your disagreements.
Just leave them everywhere.
Leave them everywhere.
Litter them across the internet.
And we'll do more of this because this was really fun.
Yeah.
Happy running. Enjoy your week. I hope that you stay safe and healthy and run happy. And for your week in review, I'm Kate.
And I'm Maddie.
We'll talk again next week.